Creating SVG images is fairly easy. Right now I have a basic HTML document. You can just use the document I provided earlier and clear the JavaScript code. We won't be needing the JavaScript portion at the moment. By default, most browsers support SVG images fairly well, so you shouldn't have any problems when using SVG. Creating an SVG is as simple as creating the element SVG. This is the minimum requirement for creating an SVG image. The SVG element is the container for all your graphics. The browser will look at this and know that you want to create an inline SVG image. This element can have a lot of attributes, but let's keep things simple. I'm going to apply two attributes called width and height. As you may have expected, this will give the element more space on the page. It's always good practice to give your SVG images a set width and height. I'm going to set both of these to 500. I'm now going to go to View, Open in Browser, which will boot up the server and open up a new tab. After the page has been loaded, you'll see that nothing really appears. That's to be expected since we haven't really created anything besides setting the width and height of an image. I'm going to right-click and select Inspect Element. This will open up the developer tools and set the tab to Elements. We previously discussed what the console and source tabs are for, but now we'll be working with the Elements tab. The Elements tab allows you to view your HTML documents in real time. This is different from viewing the page source. If you were to right-click on the page again and select View Page Source, you'll have a new tab opened up with the document being displayed as raw text. This is the document as it's being served by the server. However, once it's loaded by the browser, then it no longer updates. The Elements tab inside the Developer Tools allows you to view the documents and any changes made to it. For example, you would be able to see when an element disappears or when a new one is added. One of the great things about this tab is that you can actually edit and modify elements as well. If I were to hover my mouse over these elements, you'll see on the left that certain areas are highlighted in blue. This is telling us how space is being taken up and where the element is being placed. If you look at the document closer, you'll see the SVG element here. After hovering my mouse over this element, you can see its spot on the page. From this tooltip here, we can see that the size for this element is 500 pixels by 500 pixels. This is exactly how we defined it earlier, which is great. Something I want to highlight is that SVG elements can behave like a regular HTML element. You can apply classes, IDs, and even bind JavaScript events to this element. This is one of the reasons why D3 uses SVG. Not only can they adapt to any size, but they can be easily modified to suit our needs. This will allow us to make our charts and graphs more interactive. Let me prove this to you. We'll keep things simple. I'm going to go back to my editor and I'm going to remove these width and height attributes. We're going to apply these changes through CSS. I'm going to apply the ID attribute and set it to CTR, which is short for container. Then, inside the head tags, I'm going to create some style tags. Usually I would load an external style sheet, but this is a very basic example, so I'm not too concerned on organization right now. I'm going to select the SVG element, which would be #CTR. We can now apply the normal width and height properties. They both should have 500 pixels as the value. Alright, I'm going to refresh the page one more time, and nothing should really change on the page. But if we look at the Elements tab, you should be able to select your SVG elements. To the far right, you'll actually see all the styles applied to an element. As you can see, the width and height were both set to 500 pixels. Throughout this course, we'll be using a combination of CSS, HTML, and JavaScript to create our graphs. Some people think they can just use one technology to achieve the results, but that sometimes makes things harder than they have to be. Get into the habit of using a combination of technologies to achieve your results. It really will make things easier for you. I also want to mention that sometimes you won't be able to use CSS to make changes to elements. There are some elements related to SVG that can't be modified through CSS. That's perfectly fine. In these cases, you can just use the HTML attributes. In the next lecture, we'll start actually creating some vectors. I'll see you there.